second is that RiverNet monitoring with SIO and SDSU to really be able to monitor air quality, water quality, get a baseline for where the valley is now and how we can change it as part of the restoration group. And as I said, build mechanical bar screens in both Goat Canyon and Smuggler's Gulch, and to build the first platform for the transfer area for trash and sediment. This is going to build the whole transfer station, but it's to set the site where we can at least sort the trash that would be captured by these two bar screens. And then priorities. If STOP is our first priority, the water screens in the main channel is a much bigger project. We haven't figured that one quite out yet, but that would be our next one. We want to get that done as close in conjunction with the other two as we could. Sedimentation basins and Smuggler's Gulch in the main channel and expand that transfer station. So I don't think I need to go through this again other than to just remind you, sedimentation basins, trash clean capturing devices, and this green area, as Evan mentioned before, is the place where we really need to do the cleanup and restoration. Cost savings, we don't have estimates of that, but just think of these local agencies and what they're paying now if they didn't have to make those kind of expenditures in the future. And we do have a very fundamental base, riverteam.org, tjriverteam.org website. What we're trying to do with this isn't a fancy one yet, but it's trying to collect the base information that we all can share and know, so we know who's doing what historical studies have been done, and have a place to go for information and meetings and those kinds of things. And that's it. With that, John and I can take any questions. Thank you again for inviting.
Thank you, Carl. And John, did you have an additional presentation or?
Well, I did want to make two quick comments. On the 14th of January, I conducted a meeting in this facility. Generally, the executive officers of regional boards don't go out to elected officials. Our board members do that. They're appointed by the governor, and they generally take care of that. And Richard Wright is our board chair at this time. He knows that I conducted this meeting, and it was well attended, and I made the request there that the elected officials in the state consider legislative action to codify this effort and to create some kind of an entity, because we don't have an overarching conservancy like a river conservancy, for example, that San Diego River has. There was no body that pre-existed this team that we put together that could take on this mission and function. So until something comes along and is codified in state law, we're going to continue to function. The other question is what the federal government's role would be, and the federal government has been very responsive. The U.S. EPA, the IBWC, they've been involved with this all along. But I think that this is really a government responsibility for the federal government, first and foremost, because that water belongs to Mexico, the surface water, by water rights, and the return to sender theme has been played before in this area as well. The sewage sludge, for example, that's processed in the sewage plant goes back through the gate, and we would like to think that someday maybe the trash could go back, but I'm not going to go there. There is an issue, though, with treaty minutes. Treaty minutes are very important, and we formed a team, the international team, to work with Mexico. If one thing isn't coming through and coming out in this briefing, it's the recognition that we have to do something on this side of the border, but you can't solve the problem on this side of the border. It has to be on the other side of the border as well. And I'd like to leave you with this thought that the long-term solution to this is in Mexico. But to solve the sediment problem by putting in pavers or some of these other community-level projects, they're not going to work. That takes too much time. By that, if you wait that much time, there'll be another 10 feet of sediment in the river. So we think we've got a strategy that makes sense. We're trying to instill a sense of urgency and get the funding to do something now, and also put in place. I'd like to think that this organization is going to be around in perpetuity. That's the way we're thinking. And all the people who are doing this work are being paid, not because they're on this team, but they're being paid to do their job. Are there any questions for Carl and I?
John and Carl, thank you very much for the presentation, and you're doing a great job here addressing a very difficult problem. And I also agree that we need to continue discussions with our friends in Mexico, and Ricardo and I have had some initial discussions about the idea of putting a value on this trash, because we know in California it works when you put a value on the trash. In California, people steal each other's bottles. We will continue those discussions, because I think they're very important, and we're talking about how to design and set up a pilot recycling program in Mexico. So we will continue those efforts, and you guys are doing a great job, and I would like, with the blessing of the council, for the council to support the application before NOAA. That's a lot of money that could do a lot of good in a short amount of time. So without objection, I would ask our staff to draft a letter to be signed by the council members to NOAA supporting that application for the $9.5 million.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. We really appreciate your support here today. It's just heartwarming to see that this effort has risen to this level of interest and concern, and we thank you a great deal. And also want to thank the recovery team is nothing without all of the folks that are part of it, and the expertise and the energy and the interest behind it, and the elected officials that have been behind it have really been heartwarming. It's been around just a very short time, but there's a lot of momentum. So thanks to all those who participated. And if you want to participate, you're welcome.
Thank you. And I think both Clay and Benjamin had very brief statements. Clay, did you want to make a statement?
Sure. For potential support of the recovery team's projects, and we're talking about at least $2, maybe $3 gazillion, whatever that may be, just fill it in, is the potential for post-border fence, choose a term, offset mitigation. Let me just highlight very briefly 3 key points. Point 1, along the entire 2,000-mile border with Mexico, there is no more significant natural resource than the one right here. Point 2, along the entire 700 miles at different places of the border fence construction, there is no more intense, major construction effort that has the threat to natural resources than right here. Point 3, $50 million has been set aside so far for every other section of the border fence except right here. And so you can see that we're the most sensitive, the most threatened, with the only place that has zero money. And so the state of California, at some point, will have an opportunity to voice some alarm and concern about that missing opportunity for mitigation post-fence. And there is a move that's just in its embryonic stage of getting congressional support, which will require state support, to go back and say, hold it a second. When the waiver was enacted, it was enacted for the purposes of expediting the construction of the fence. That has been accomplished. Those of you who have been to the border, you've seen the fence is just about done. The waiver worked. The waiver was not enacted for the purposes of sticking it to environmental law. We have an opportunity now to ask the president to go back in time and say, okay, the waiver worked. Now let's ask the question, what would have been the permitting offsets if they were done at that time? And our passion, our commitment to existing environmental laws cries out for us now, the federal government, to still hold up those environmental laws after the fact. And so you're going to start seeing that movement afoot, and it will need the state's support. So thank you.
Sure, just really briefly again, I'm from Wild Coast, and we are a local nonprofit here in Imperial Beach. And we've really seen the efforts to address the problems associated with Tijuana River pollution really blossom and really mature. And there's a lot of momentum right now. But in the same respect, we have to realize we are here at the end of the pipe. And all of these efforts completely depend on our ability to work effectively with Mexico. And this issue also, the impacts, their economic impacts, their environmental impacts, and their public health impacts. And for us, I'm really encouraged to see so many people from